Welcome to episode 16. Here's what you can expect this week.
I don't really need to look that hard. People just kind of like I work in the field, so I end up hearing about them.
Hey, so-and-so, have you ever heard of
Yeah, if you guys could look at the back end of our podcast planning, you would know the disease that Will has, which is, I don't know how you find out about them, but I feel like you just have like a certain... Sorry, we're coming with ideas on the podcast, folks.
We don't need one more tool.
No, we do. And the other thing too is you can post public resources too, and you can actually like pull in public, like people can post their resources. Welcome, folks, to another high-tech podcast. I did that weird thing again with emphasis.
Do we do anything?
Is that like
normal?
Our new thing? I kind of feel like I'm chanting at a sports game when I do it that way.
Hi.
Anyway, welcome, guys. Another week, joined by me, Josh Swartz, and the Will Illingworth. I tried a nickname again, maybe.
Okay, keep
no?
going. You'll get there.
It's
I
fine.
don't know, maybe.
We'll get there. Yeah, another week.
Here.
More tech, more conversations, more weird things to introduce. Welcome to High Tech Podcast, guys. We're excited for you guys to join us this week. We got some great stuff we're gonna be talking about. Excited to dive in a little bit, talk about how we find tools. Take a look at a great research tool we're gonna be looking at. We got some good stuff, but before we do that, we need to ask the vital question, right? The question that I know is on all of your minds. Okay, you've been thinking this while listening to our episodes. What is their favorite pasta dish?
Right. It wasn't the Marvel questions. It wasn't their favorite book.
No,
None of that
what's
mattered.
their favorite pasta dish? They were like, why do you keep telling me this crap, guys? I want to know what pasta dish you like. We know what you've been thinking. Oh. So we can read your minds.
I mean, I just had a pasta dish for dinner tonight that my wife made that was fantastic. I mean, I want it again already.
Okay.
But,
what was it? Lay it on me.
Oh, it's...
Is this not your favorite pasta dish?
It was... No.
Are you admitting on a podcast episode right now that whatever your wife just made for you is not your favorite pasta dish?
No. Don't back me into a corner. No. Be kind, Josh. No, I loved it. I just don't know what to call it. It was like linguine with some nice yummy sauce and like peppery chicken something or other. I don't know.
I feel like I just ate it myself. I'm there.
You got me. Nailed it. Now, the one that comes to mind when I think about favorite pasta dish, and this is the reason I threw this question out there is because I've had a lot of pasta in my life.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Lots of different kinds. Every year for Christmas, my family does the 7 fishes. And with each of those fishes, there's usually some sort of pasta accoutrement.
Okay, hold on. Can I pause you just for 1 second? What the heck is the 7 fishes?
Oh, dude.
Is that a thing? What is that?
It's this amazing thing. You've never heard of the 7 fishes?
No.
It's an Italian-American tradition.
Okay.
Where they eat the 7 fishes. It has something in, I think, a Catholic background. I don't know if the 7 fishes like each represent something, right? But my Italian-American family has done this every Christmas, even before my current generation. Like my grandparents did this, and my great-grandparents did this. It's not any specific set of 7, but there have to be 7 fishes at the dinner table. So there's salmon, there's tuna, there's cod, then we get a little flexible, like shrimp we count as a fish.
Oh, okay.
Scallops, we get a little fast and loose, right?
But a little fast and loose with what fish means.
There's always 7 different types of seafood. Present.
All right, I'm learning new things right now. I literally had no idea that was a thing.
So the one though, if I go to a pasta dish as a result of that comes to mind that like just sits right in the heart of my stomach is probably like a fettuccine with scallops and shrimp.
That sounds real good.
Definitely like Alfredo. So it's a seafood Alfredo, but it's like it's got to have the shrimp and the scallops.
Okay. That sounds very good. And
that's okay. So that's a white sauce too. Like, what about you?
It's white sauce.
Where are you? White sauce, red sauce. You gotta have.
Here's the thing, guys. We did not talk about this beforehand, which is why I feel like
say ditto.
I feel like I'm at a meal. You know, guys, when somebody orders something off the menu that you wanted to order, and you feel like an idiot ordering it because you're like, I can't order the same thing that they order.
We're not going out. We're not a couple. If I eat the same thing as him,
I can't share. So like, I just want to preface this with, I would normally pick like seafood Alfredo. That's my jam. Okay. Specifically, ironically, with scallops in it. So let's clarify that. But for the sake of the podcast, okay?
Okay. He's willing to sacrifice
for the podcast, okay? I'll let that go. So I'll come to my close second, okay? We went on a cruise a couple years ago, and they had this bolognese that was just amazing, okay? And I've had bolognese before, but I didn't realize it was bolognese. I was just like, oh, it's spaghetti. Because let's just be honest. Bolognese, I'm still not quite sure the giant difference between spaghetti. Okay, but I'm sure there's an Italian listener to this podcast that wants to murder me right now. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
But it was so good. I got it like multiple times on that cruise, and it still sticks with me. Okay. So that's my honorable second. But okay. I feel like I have to emphasize that. Ask anybody outside this podcast. I'm not making it up. Okay, seafood Alfredo would have been like one of my favorite choices as a pasta dish. So
next time you get to answer the question first. So I have to say no.
Darn right I do.
Sorry about that.
Anyway,
well, once we've found the best pasta dish, of course, and the reasons behind it, we have to find the right tool for the job.
Transition. Woo. Sorry.
You know, it's like a foreshadowing penalty right there. You call it out, it's done, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Josh and I have probably talked about this in a couple different flavors already, right? We did the EdTech Frameworks episode. We did, we did an episode on like how to pick an app, right? And some of that really gets into a lot of the like technical stuff, right? Josh and I get into the accessibility or the privacy. Tonight, I actually want to focus on the process of like finding new tools, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not about picking the right tool. You might find a tool that you end up not using through this result. But Josh was joking with me before the episode, like, you know, he's like, how do you find tools? How do I find tools? And he's, what did you say? You're like, I use Google or...
Yeah, I said, I call it Google or Will. Those are my answers to this question. I do have a little bit more of a developed answer, but I'll be honest. Like, I've got enough people in my life who are great at finding new apps that like I don't really need to look that hard. People just kind of like I work in the field, so I end up hearing about them.
Hey, so and so, have you ever heard of a?
Yeah, if you guys could look at the back end of our podcast planning, you would know the disease that Will has, which is I don't know how you find out about them, but I feel like you just have like a search set up on your computer that just says, "Oh, new ed tech app, find, appear."
Well, actually, I mean, it does get to our first point. Like a lot of it for me comes from networks. I follow hundreds of people on Twitter. I think I'm up to 600, 700 people I follow on Twitter, which is almost useless to have that many. I try and prune it every once in a while, but there are a lot of K-12 folks, and you know what I mean? If I'm talking to people across the 50 states, some internationally, none of them are using the same two apps. Like,
that's true.
They all use Google. A lot of them use, Nearpod. Like after that, they all use something different. And that's really, I think, what gives me a lot of, breadth. But I do spend a lot of time in tools. Like I really try not to get lost in the ed tech, because a lot of folks get concerned when you just lead with ed tech in your conversations and design. But it's important, you don't go to build a deck without a hammer and a saw, right? Like you need to have your tools. So
yeah, you just happen to know about like 12 different hammers.
Well, you see, you gotta have the hammer with the claw hook. You gotta have the hammer that's a ball peen. You gotta have the hammer that's a mallet, right? Like you need your different versions.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if it's not networking, I personally turn to a website called alternative2.net. So that's one word, alternative2.net. This is where, like, I know maybe something that's like what I want to be working with, but I need an alternative to it, right? Love the website. So I'll put in Nearpod into alternative2.net, and that's going to bring up Pear Deck. That's going to bring up Go React. That's going to bring up Top Hat, right? Like, those are options that are going to be comparable to one another. You want to use something like Poll Everywhere, but you don't like Poll Everywhere's interface. You put in Poll Everywhere, it comes up with other options. Hey, I used this when my password manager app was changing some of its policies, and I was like, all right, I'm leaving you then. I threw that app into alternative 2, and one of the top ones that came up was Bitwarden. And what was even really helpful for me in that context, a personal decision, not an education-focused decision, was that it told me Bitwarden's open source. It told me how their freemium plan works. It tells me, a lot of reviews and stuff in there from other, tech users and people who are into security, so that they really took it seriously about, reviewing a password manager. It was perfect. It got me right to the product I needed, and I switched that day. I don't use this all the time, but the other thing you can do with alternative2.net is type in whiteboard. Like if you don't know what whiteboarding app you need, hint, go check out one of our former episodes. You can just put something like that in there, and it's going to pull up tools in that space. So really helpful. I use it probably once a week, just trying to find something that's different for somebody else's needs. But it can be a nice little search there, again, for ed tech or for things like your password manager.
Yeah, and this is like, we're having a conversation about how we find this, so we're not necessarily like promoting an app here for this, but it is a good site to do this. And I've used it some. I think it's good, especially like if like you type in whiteboard, you can type in stuff like that, but if you know like a big name brand app that does something that you want to do, but you're never going to get funding to get that app, this is how we find some of the other free versions of things or tools that are doing. Because the reality is, like, every app in ed tech, there's another app doing the same thing, mostly. Except for maybe Math Whiteboard when we talked about one of those other episodes. I'm still convinced there's nobody else doing that. But there's a lot of apps doing the same thing. Now I joked about like Google and I joked about Will, but I think one of the really, I think the biggest thing for me is a network of people, like, and just being like, I'm up to date on, like, I like technology, so I end up just finding apps. It's not like I'm like, I have a secret, like, ear to the ground. It's just like, I keep an eye on the internet. Like, I know what apps are coming out. I know, and generally, like, we laugh about Google, but like, if you're looking for an app to do something, like, you can Google it, guys. You're gonna get things. You just have to be careful about what you get. You're probably going to get ads about the big ones that are out there, but you can find stuff. Like, I've done that before, and I'm trying to figure out a tool that does something. I just do research. Like, I think the piece is when you're looking for an app, because we're not necessarily talking about how to evaluate. We're just talking about like how you find it. Like, just look at all the possibilities. Because if I had $1 for everybody who was like, I looked up something, I found one app that does what I wanted, and then like they just bought into that idea. Like, they just went with it. It's like, those tools can maybe do what you want, but there might be other options out there that do it better. There might be, I'm not saying spend hours researching this, but just spend a little bit of time looking up the amount of blog posts that people post on the internet of like top 9 productivity tools, top 9, like,
right.
Go look through those and just look at a handful of those. That's often what I'll do. I'll go look at blog posts from other people in ed tech, that do that. And big ones like Chronicle Higher Ed, different posts, like areas, they have an ed tech section.
ISTE.
They'll post stuff that's out there. Yeah, like
I think they're International Society of Technology and Education or something like that. ISTE is all about educational technology.
Yeah, or online consortium, like those options. Like, I follow those websites, right? So like I just find out about apps, and then I have a network of people. Like, I go ask. If you don't have, like, you don't work in the field like Will and I do, go ask somebody that you know is like Will and I at your institution. Like, go see what they're doing. Chances are they're going to know, or they'll be able to find for you much quicker, right, whatever you want. Or, I don't know, email this cool ed tech podcast that's running around called High Tech Podcast. I don't know what they're called. But I can tell you we got a library of apps that do most of everything you can think of in ed tech right now. So
stay tuned, because we're not even shying away from things that are like-minded. Like, okay, we did an episode on Nearpod. We're going to come back and do some episodes later on tools like Top Hat and Poll Everywhere. We're putting some space between the episodes. We don't want you to just get bombarded with them back to back to back, but for you to hear our real and user-focused opinion on Nearpod and Top Hat competitors, I think is important. So we're going to hopefully be a resource to you as more episodes come out and as we develop our repertoire. But I agree with Josh. Like, there's a couple of tools you can use to find things, but beyond that, some of it really comes down to network. And I'll tell you, I am surprised how many faculty don't know what their peers are doing. And it makes sense when they may not know what their peers are doing in other departments or subject matters, so I get that. But that's one of the things that I kind of do miss in a pre-COVID world. Our center used to host lunch and learns where we would have an engineering faculty member come in and talk about what they did in their course design with us, right? And that usually came back to a tool or a method. And so we'd have an engineering faculty member talking to a lunch and learn group with, 20, 30 people in humanities, criminal justice, all these different things, right? And that was so cool that they got to hear each other's opinions and get that information. We don't have those spaces right now with COVID-19. We'll hopefully be getting back to some of that soon. But turn to your peers. If you know of people that you've been on a committee with, or you've served in a volunteer situation with, ask them, hey, what do you use in your class to get engagement with students? What do you use in your class to do digital whiteboarding? Do you use the Zoom tools to do polling? Start with some of those questions from your peers and see what they do, because they're a great resource too. They're teaching just like you are, so clearly they've got to be figuring this stuff out.
Yeah, and I'll throw this one out again. Online Learning Consortium. They're obviously they're focused on online, but I can go to them a good bit because they do and we still do a digital version of Lunch and Learns. One of our colleagues at our institution still is doing that type of stuff, and he's been doing good stuff of videos and things of faculty talking about what they've been doing over this period of time. But places like Online Learning Consortium or a couple other, I'd have to find some of the other resources. They will often have learn sections on there where they'll have different things on different stuff you can do in a digital space. I think it's a combination of networking, just having people have those conversations. If you're trying to figure out something to do, you need an app to, have some type of collaboration or polling in your class, or you want to do better discussion stuff in your online class, or you're looking at how to add interactive video or things like that. Also just ask people. I think there's so many times I see a lot of faculty who will get in their own lane and not really talk to other people about what they're doing. And to your point, well, I think there's no silver bullet to just finding out apps online. It's a combination of get connected with some sites like we're mentioning, keep an eye on them, what they're posting about, what they're looking at, check out a podcast, and talk to other faculty, find out what they're doing, ask somebody in your department or outside your department what have they been doing in their courses, and you'll be amazed to find out what you can do. And also then connect with, most of your institutions are going to have some type of office like the ones that Will and I work in. Don't be afraid to ask those offices what options are out there.
We literally love answering that question.
We have those, we have lots of options for you in those spaces. And I think it's getting out of comfort zone to ask, because I'm always surprised by the amount of people that just don't know what's possible in the digital environment. Yeah. So I think those are the combinations, people and different sites and resources. It seems novel, but I find so many people who don't do that.
Yeah. Now we've really taken a moment to break this down for you, and what I want to do now is take a moment to mend it back together. By mending it back together, I mean transition to our application for the day.
Transition.
The application we have in mind is called Mendeley. Mendeley. This is a really cool app. I've been using it for years. Josh, you use it too, right?
Yeah, I use it a bunch. Actually, you're the one who got me onto this. So yeah. Perfect example of networking, folks, and how I use Will.
So how did I get you into this? What did I do? Where were you at?
I don't remember the exact context. I feel like it was when I was getting into. We were talking about grad school, I think, or something, and you were showing me something, a resource, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And you started mentioning Mendeley, so I started looking into it, and I was like, oh, okay, sweet. I like this. Because what led me to Mendeley is I was often having problems with, PDFs and things I would get from courses and stuff like that. Back then I didn't have, I didn't care enough to invest in trying to figure out how to bring it all into a singular
You also didn't have Notion yet. If you had Notion back then,
Notion and I had not had our beautiful
awakening.
Awakening together yet. So So that's I think how I got into Mendeley. So I started looking into that, and because you shared some resources with me, and I started tagging them by the things we were dealing with, and that's kind of how it started.
So it's Mendeley is a document storage, and I guess kind of it's meant to be like a scholarly works, but you could put Word documents, you could put anything into it, document wise if you want to, PDFs, docs, pictures, but it's meant to be like an annotation / citation software. It's comparable to EndNote, Zotero. There's a bunch of other ones out there on the market, but what I do with Mendeley is upload my PDFs of journal articles and things like that into it. I highlight them, I put comments on them, etc., and then they stay there, right? Anywhere I go, if I pull it up on my phone, if I pull it up on another device, I can sync those notes and things to myself, and get my annotations anywhere. I remember, when I started using it with grad school as well, it just made paper writing so easy. I could search for anything I wanted that was in my library of resources and pull up citations, pull up authors that I needed to reference. It was just so great.
Yeah, and why it's a document piece, when I talk about it to people, I definitely advertise it, and they advertise it this way on their site too, which is like a research tool. Like it's supposed to bring some sanity to the research space, right? That you can now condense a library of a lot of different resources, from web articles to PDFs to scanned documents to Word documents, all in a singular place that you can search, that you can star and favorite into spaces that you look at. You can look through, you can tag it, and to Will's comment, the thing we've kind of alluded to but haven't mentioned, has citation systems in there too, so you can put in all the information for the resource that you have, and then easily pull a citation in any of the formats that you want, that you're working on.
Yeah, just copy and paste it. It's great. If you put in the data accurately, they do well with updating the APA, MLA, etc., Chicago.
Yeah.
To keep up with modern standards. So as long as you put in the correct data, it will export it in the correct format, and you just copy and paste. It's so good.
And to your point, what I love about it is it's accessible across devices. Like it's like I have the app on my desktop, I have the app on my phone. You don't need the app. There's a web version that you can use that I actually like. There's certain elements of the web version they like. The user interface is a little bit better in the web version. I
actually didn't know they had a web version.
They have a web version. Yeah, so you can actually use the web version because I think I didn't want to go through the work of installing it on my new laptop once, so I pulled up the web version just to like go through it quickly. And there's some limitations to it. It doesn't work with like I have a stylus on my laptop that I can use to highlight. The web version doesn't work as well as the desktop app. Like the desktop app will actually register highlights and stuff, but the web version's pretty solid, so you can access it anywhere. You can basically open it and get access to your stuff, and I love it. Like I categorize things in there because yes, I love tags, and there's a reason Notion and I have a beautiful friendship, is that I love organizing my stuff. So like I have things tagged by topics and things like that, so I can easily, like if I'm looking for something on general ed tech stuff, I can pull that tag up and find it. If I'm looking for something on like learning design or experience, like I can pull that stuff up pretty quickly. If I'm looking for theology, or even have stuff categorized by like books of the Bible in my Mendeley on resources, so like I can pull that stuff up pretty quickly. So it's just like it helps me organize my research and resources.
I know I have things in there for like the EdTech frameworks, like TPAC, SAMR, RAT are each of my tags. I can pull up any of the articles I have on those pieces. It's really helpful and free, right? Like I've never once had any sort of freemium setup. I've never used up all my space. Like I don't know how they get away with it, frankly, but they probably have some sort of like institutional or enterprise pricing for somebody else. Because as a free user, again, I can use it across all my devices, as many devices as I want. I can share with others. I can make like shared libraries. So Josh and I could share a library on all of our user experience articles if we wanted to. We'd have access to each other's references.
Should create a shared podcast library. That'd be a good idea. We're coming with the ideas on the podcast, folks.
We don't need one more tool.
No, we do. And the other thing too is you can post public resources too, and you can actually like pull in public, like people can post their resources. I think Mendeley in a public space, and you can pull stuff out as well. If you didn't know that. So
I've never used that side of it. So now practically we could see this being used in an educational context. how we've used it, right? Get your grad students, get your undergrad students to start creating a repository of subject matter related information. Like one of the things that really kind of bummed me out about my undergrad experience is that everything in my major of study was a physical piece of paper handout. I was okay with physical books. I knew I liked books. I could take those with, but all the handouts really got under my skin because eventually I had these binders and binders and binders of paper that, frankly, unless I knew how to use them and made some system to them, which is not my forte or desire, they were useless. I threw them out. I don't have any of the resources for my undergraduate that were paper. In my graduate studies, I started using Mendeley first semester. The first article went in there. I organized by courses I took, so I could go back and look at the corpus of like each course I took. But that really helped me. Today, I still have all those articles, and my master's degree, of course, was in this field, right? Learning design and technology. But now it's relevant. If I need something, I can go and find those articles. And as long as your articles have optical character recognition already done on them, or as long as they're in good enough quality that it can do its own OCR, Mendeley can read it. Like I've never had issues with that unless it's like really poor visual quality or it's like pictures, if it's not actually OCR'd. So Mendeley can handle that, and it's great, like for an academic study for research purposes. But I could also see kind of like a sociological value to this, right? So you could have like a sociology study saying, pull together X amount of artifacts on this element of society or this element of culture, or build a Mendeley library that represents the information folks are trying to do. You don't have to do an app like this to do that, but the good thing to know is that it's free, and you could. There's nothing stopping you from using Mendeley for anything creative like that.
Yeah, where I'd love to, like, and I think all those are great ideas. Where I've always been thinking around Mendeley, I'd love to push it in is that, and we haven't been able to do this on our end, but I would love to push it as to students from an instructor perspective to say, like, here's a research help tool. Like, we're gonna provide you resources. Here's how you put it into Mendeley, encouraging them to think through this type of stuff, like how to organize, take notes. One of the things I love about Mendeley, and the reason I use it all the time, is that I love their note system a lot. Like highlighting and adding notes and things like that is really easy through Mendeley, right on top of any other type of document, and it's all searchable. Like I can search through my notes to find, where the heck did I make that note about whatever this was in here. I had a good thought when I was reading it, but now I'm dumb. I need to remember what I said. And easily search it across all my documents too. Like I could easily search it across those spaces. And so I've always wanted to, Mendeley, I think, lends itself to being a tool that can help enhance students' research and resourcing of themselves, working through what they get through courses. Actually, to your point, giving kind of an organization and a value to some of the resources they get handed that can be easily used, and kind of teaching note features to it. I would love to kind of push it in an early space that's kind of like, hey, here's a research tool. Right. They can help use this, put the stuff that you get inside this, any of the resources you find for papers, things like that. Here's how you use it, and kind of basically use it as a tool to teach good research practices when you're working through things.
And that's where I think it would have a great value in a first year seminar or institution 101, as well as in your research class. I know I took a research writing class in grad school. I know, I've designed programs that have these courses in them. Why not? It's a really great resource. I'd just love to see more folks use it. As it goes by data and privacy, copyright, accessibility, I think it's really good on a lot of those fronts. Accessibility wise, I haven't put it through a full test, but I know that its shortcoming for accessibility would be the files you put in it, right? Mm-hmm. Their platform is really straightforward. It follows a correct software design. So I've used Dragon and some of the speaking, reading apps like that to navigate tools like this before. I wouldn't be concerned about Mendeley's interface, but whatever PDF you put in it is or isn't accessible, right? If it's not optical character recognition and it's not been done correctly, then the PDF's not accessible, and that's not Mendeley's fault. It's what you put in it. Yeah. Mendeley as well does not take any copyright liability for anything you put in it. So you have to be the one being responsible with your use of copyright. If you've ever looked into it, if you're not familiar, it's good to know. If you download that journal article from your library for your personal use with your notes and your annotations, legal, no copyright issues. If you download that journal article from a licensed source from your library, put it on your laptop, and then hand it to the next person, not legal. You've broken copyright. You were the licensed user, and that other person should go right back to your library and get the copy themselves from that. So Mendeley is not meant to be a throughput where you can put all your files to hand them out to other people who aren't licensed to have access to them. You do want to be careful of your own copyright in that way, but Mendeley, I've not come across any features that prevent you from doing that, so you need to operate ethically in that space.
Well, and Mendeley assumes that you either know that or that responsibility is with you. Like they're just enabling you a better library research tool. They're not trying to be the person who teaches you how to use library research. They're a tool enabling you to do it differently. How to act ethically. And to your point about accessibility, they have a whole statement about it. Like they make their tool as accessible as possible, with obviously the exclusion of they can't care for the resources you get. Like they can't just magically make your resource more accessible. So I think that's the limitation. But yeah, I definitely think, like to your point, a seminar, I think like, I'm thinking like even PhD doctoral stuff. Like this would be a useful app to think through, like them to use it to gather the resources and the research they need. And imagine if it was used where I've always wished we could use it is like, imagine if it was used on an institutional level or amongst a bunch of courses. You could easily share resources, like without breaking copyright, sharing your resources with, the person helping you writing, PhD, helping you writing your research paper, whatever you're doing. Like it gives some enabling.
That's a lot of how the research writing classes I've been a part of or have helped design have used EndNote, right? They've used EndNote to that effect, and EndNote just happens to be really expensive. So I'd rather look at something like Mendeley, which we can use for free, and then learn if there's any differences between it and EndNote. I'm not familiar with EndNote, but I know Mendeley, and I know that Mendeley is free. Why not?
I know. I think EndNote was used at one point in our context too. I don't know it as well either, but I know Mendeley can do a lot of what EndNote could do. And the stuff that maybe you can't, there's
right. I think we can make up for that.
I think this tool needs to do it. I agree. I think there's like some expensive options that Mendeley is a very solid free version. Like I don't have a lot of issues with how Mendeley does their stuff.
This is one of those like tool. 2 out of 2 Josh and I could recommend. Like there's no qualms between the two of us. Like
if I could pick one qualm, it would maybe be, hey, let's get the user interface in the app a little nicer. Because I've seen the web version and I'm like, oh, that looks really nice. That's cool. What happened to the app? Do we forget about that? But that's
hey, I could see a world.
I can get around
a world
it.
where they get away from their software.
And that might be the direction they're going. I think that's a good direction to go. It's because that's where a lot of other people are going in the space, and quite frankly, what they're already doing makes sense. The access across
Mendeley.com, sign in. You're good,
because it is really easy to get in there. And I will mention too, just in case you guys are curious about it, Mendeley has like extensions for Chrome and browsers too that are really cool that you can grab websites and auto import them into your Mendeley library. So I don't know if you're giving me the look like you've not been using that.
I didn't know about that.
This is our dynamic, folks. Okay, Will knows all the apps. He knows how to use them, and then somehow I find features deeper into the app that he tells me about. This is why our relationship works.
No, I'm the width pool, and Josh is the depth. Like I know about hundreds of tools, and Josh knows about the ones that he likes very well.
True. Very true. So I'd recommend this. I'd check it out. If you don't have a tool like this, check it out. Use it. Play with it a little bit. I think one of the immediate uses is like, hey, if you're trying to teach your students how to do research, how to use resources well, Mendeley is a tool that gives you an environment to do that on a digital space. And like, yes, I have same stuff. Like I've gotten handouts, and if you could see in my background, I got binders in the bottom corner, right? The last time I opened those binders, it's been a while, okay? And I understand some of my professors will be so mad at me right now that that's the case. And it's just the reality. We live in a digital space now. And it is way easier for me to search through Mendeley of what I'm going to find. And You can call that laziness. You can call whatever it is. It's like, but it's also it's way more convenient, and I don't have to worry about trying to remember what page it was on. I can search what I need quickly and get to the actual work that I need to do, and that's what I like about Mendeley. And I think you could really leverage that with your students to help teach good research practices in a way that'll actually save them time, in a cool space. That's why I really like this tool.
And if you need that quote on page 63 that's 3 lines long, you don't have to retype it. You can copy and paste it. Like,
oh yeah, that's the other.
hello.
I'll throw that in if we're gonna keep talking about it. Their copy and paste stuff is solid. Like, I've had a lot of tools that you can copy and paste out of, and you get weird formatting and a bunch of weird stuff. I really love Mendeley's system, the back end of what they got going on. Copy and pasting is so easy out of their tool.
Yeah.
I really like it, which is great. Like, I've used it here in this podcast. Like, I think one of our pages, there's a quote I remembered from one of our learning design books I was reading, about like learning user experience. I needed it for, I think it was actually our first episode. I was like, oh, this quote would be perfect. I can't remember which book it was from, because I have like 4 different books titled learning design, experience design, education, learning. Like,
design,
so I couldn't remember
design.
what it was, but I could remember like the first couple lines. So I typed it into Mendeley, hit enter, and Mendeley immediately found it for me in one of the books that I was looking for, copy and pasted it, and threw it into our episode page. And quoted it, because I felt like it really set the bar for what we were trying to talk about.
Yeah.
So that's just a good example. Like, it took me a minute or two to find that, as opposed to I probably would have been paging through pages of things, trying to figure out what book I was in. So it's not the silver bullet, but it is a good app. There's rare cases where we get to talk about apps that we really, really like, and I can't find a lot of problems with it, and Mendeley would be one of those.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Josh and Will agree on an app. There's no major breakdown. We love it.
No qualms.
Not this time. This is not a certain app. So it's good. We love digging into this with you. We love digging into these ideas. We spend our days in and out trying to figure this all out. So we hope that this adventure, as we try and figure out how to best harness technology in the physical and digital classroom, is useful to you. Thanks for tuning in this week, and we hope that you'll catch us next week. Until then, see ya.
See ya.